Good evening, viewer. And, okay, in the words of Christopher Walken, hey, yo, what the fuck? Oh, okay, Gary, sorry to have to be the one to tell you this, but, in the words of Alphonse Meshuggah, you're fired. What? You can't fire me from SOTD. I am SOTD. Modest as ever. What? Well, truth be known, Juggies, I'm not sacking you, as you've somehow managed to sack yourself. Has this got anything to do with a certain tweet about the language of 1930s Germany, pork pie? It most certainly has. This old chestnut. Right then, I invoke parley. Not impressed, Gary. I happen to drive a Tesla, which is much better for the environment than your Range Rover. What? No, I call to order the kangaroo court. Huh. Well, this should be interesting. Okay. Lady or gentleman of the jury, as let's face it, we don't actually know what sex our viewer is. Juggies put out a tweet that compared the Tory party to the Nazi party. Objection overruled on the grounds that you're a gutless liar. Excuse me? You said that the language used by the Tory party was akin to the language used in Germany in the 1930s, which begs one question. Namely, who came to prominence or power in Germany in the 1930s, which means your words were very specific and direct, while simultaneously being very vague, as clearly you're too gutless to stand by the courage of your convictions. I mean, a lot more people would have a lot more respect for you if you just come out and said you think the Tory party sound like the Nazi party prior to them embarking on their decade-long killing spree. Okay. If somebody says something abhorrent in the mainstream media and lots of people are shocked and offended by those words, you, Gary, would be at the front of the queue requesting and demanding that said person be held accountable, as that is what you do when you are not presenting football shows. Thing is, you yourself uttered words that have offended other people, yet you dug your heels in and refused to apologise for any and all offence caused, which is somewhat hypocritical given that you are clearly incapable of doing the very thing that you expect others to do. The language used in Germany in the 1930s. By who, Gary? The Jews? The Mormons? The People's Front of Judea, perhaps? No, as there is only one party that came to prominence or power in Germany in the 1930s, and that was Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party. I shall not mince my words in the way that you have. Before and during the Second World War, the Nazis killed tens of millions of people, and not just Jews. You would get killed if you were gay, or black, or brown, or yellow. You would get killed if you had a mental or physical disability. In fact, you would be in line to get killed if you did not meet the Aryan stock criteria of blonde hair and blue eyes, which was kind of odd given that Adolf Hitler had black hair and brown eyes. But moving on, after the war had ended and the atrocities of the Nazis came to light, those responsible were arrested, rounded up and put on trial in a place called Nuremberg, where they were held accountable and put to death. The Tory party want to stop illegal immigrants from entering the UK, and for coming up with a policy that tries to do that, you implied that the Tories were on par with the Nazis. You then told the public that you would be hosting Match of the Day and that everything was fine, which the BBC contradicted when they told you to have the day off work, which prompted Ian Wright, Alan Shearer and many others to down tools and say, "Solidarity, Reg." The main problem I have with this particular scenario is the fact that we are enduring a cost of living crisis, which, when added to the soaring ticket prices, means there are millions of people who cannot afford to attend home or away matches. By the same token, there are even more people who cannot afford to purchase a monthly subscription for Sky Sports or BT Sports, which means there are millions of people out there, hard-working licence payers, who exclusively rely on the BBC to furnish them with their weekly fix of Premier League football. Yet on Saturday night, Match of the Day was broadcast with no host, no pundits, no commentators, and no post-match interviews. So the only people who lost out were the fans, without whom the beautiful game is nothing. Everybody is entitled to their own opinions, including those who work for the BBC, in that they can agree with this or disagree with that. However, the Nazis killed tens of millions of people, and as Rishi Sunak isn't expected at Nuremberg anytime soon, your statement overstepped the mark by quite some distance. You and your co-presenters are retired top-flight football players, and if none of you ever host Match of the Day again, it will not be a problem, as you are not reliant on the money you earn from the BBC. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the commentators, who have to make their own way to and from the matches, research their own notes, and get paid a pittance by comparison. No chauffeurs, no green rooms, no nothing. And whereas you lot can always get work on other channels, the commentators probably won't be so lucky, and having been put in a position where they've chosen a co-worker over their employer, their contracts may not be renewed next season, as biting the hand that feeds you is more often than not frowned upon. There was a 2-day grace period where you had the opportunity and ability to reflect on this situation, realise it's way bigger than you are, and publicly say that maybe you were wrong, and that maybe your words might have been taken out of context, and that your stance could have caused offence to the very people who pay your wages, and that if that were the case, you apologise for any offence that may have been caused, despite the fact that no actual offence was intended, and nip this whole situation in the bud. However, it would appear that you're incapable of doing that, as you are flawless, you never make mistakes or speak out of turn, your shit don't stink, and apologising to laymen is clearly beneath you, as it's impossible for someone as high and mighty as you to upset or offend someone as lowly as a TV viewer. You, Gary, will be fine. Shearer will be fine. Righty and all the others will be fine. Sadly, I can't say the same for the Match of the Day commentators that have had to back you up, as I genuinely do not feel that they will be fine, because they are a lot further down the food chain and are significantly easier to replace. Ian Dennis did his job that week and commentated on the game between Leeds and Brighton for BBC Radio 5 Live. For his troubles, or should I say, for not downing tools and jumping on the Team Lineker bandwagon, Ian Dennis received a ton of abuse online, which was significantly more savage than the few bits of abuse George Lineker got for being your son. You took to Twitter and asked both Twitter and Elon Musk if it was acceptable for your son to take said abuse. Did you do the same on behalf of Ian Dennis? No, I didn't think so. You said something online, people took offence to it, and you refused to apologise. Why is that? Well, realistically, there can only be one of two reasons. A. Gary Lineker genuinely believes that he is somehow infallible, and that it's impossible for his words to offend people, which is ridiculous, as only God is infallible. Or B. Gary Lineker refuses to apologise to those offended by his words as they are in favour of the Tory party policy on illegal immigration to the UK and therefore not worthy of an apology, possibly because by disagreeing with the High Priest of Mumbo Jumbo, they are somehow beneath him, maybe deemed to be a lower order of life form. Right then, we have no host, we have no pundits, we have no managers or players to interview, and we have no commentators to give the final scores for week 27 of the 22 to 23 season. So, Gary Lineker, in the words of Alphonse Mashugana, you're fired. So, Gary Lineker thinks he's God, or he thinks that those offended by his words are not worthy of an apology. Well, if the latter turns out to be the case, I would have to openly say that the language used by Gary Lineker is no different from the language used by Adolf Hitler in Germany in the early 1930s, prior to him and his Nazi party going on their infamous 10-year killing spree.
Harry Maguire!